Welcome to the Before AGI podcast. Today we're diving deep into something that's, well, moving very quickly from theory to practice, AI agents.
That's right. We've been looking at guides from OpenAI and others, trying to really get a handle on them.
Yeah, and our goal today is to sort of cut through the noise, give you a clear picture of what these systems are, why everyone's talking about them.
Mm-hmm. Think of it as your shortcut, basically,
Yeah.
getting you up to speed on what they can do without drowning in the jargon.
Exactly. We want to unpack the core ideas, make it engaging, relevant, whether you're deep in tech or just, AI curious.
Right. So what makes an agent different? Where do they shine? Yeah. How are they built? And importantly, how do we keep them safe? That's what we're tackling.
Okay, let's jump right in. This term AI agent, it seems to get thrown around a lot. What are we actually talking about here? Is it just another name for a chatbot?
That's a really good place to start because, yeah, the term can be a bit fuzzy, but fundamentally, an AI agent is a system. It's powered by an LLM, a large language model. And its job is to manage an entire workflow to get something done for you independently.
Independently, that sounds like the key difference.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
not just responding to one question or one command. It figures out the steps needed, makes decisions as it goes, and keeps working until the goal is achieved, all within the boundaries you set, of course.
So it's a continuous process, not just a one-off interaction.
Precisely. There are a few key things that define a real agent. It uses that LLM brain to orchestrate the whole task. It decides what to do next.
Right.
It knows when it's finished. And this is where it gets really interesting. If it hits a snag, it can actually try to fix the problem itself.
Wow, okay. A proactive correction.
Yeah. And crucially, for practical use, it also knows its limits.
Yeah.
It knows when to say, okay, I need a human to look at this.
That human intervention piece sounds vital. So it's way more than just software following a script then.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the tools it can use.
Right, you mentioned tools. What kind of things could it actually do?
Well, tools are basically how the agent interacts with the outside world. Usually external functions, APIs,
Yeah.
Ways to connect to other software or data sources.
Like accessing a database.
Yeah.
Or sending an email.
Exactly. Or maybe pulling info from documents, searching the web. It could even interact with older systems, kind of mimicking how a person clicks around on a screen.
So it's bridging the gap between the LLM's understanding and actual actions in different systems.
That's it. And the agent dynamically picks the right tool for whatever step it's on, always within its safety rules, naturally.
Okay, so if a chatbot is like sending a quick text, an agent is more like delegating a whole project.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually.
Right.
Traditional software is rigid, right?
Yeah.
Follows a strict checklist.
Yeah.
Basic LLMs are just that back and forth chat. But the agent, it's managing the whole flow,
Right.
making choices, using tools.
Like that payment fraud example you mentioned.
Exactly. A rules engine just checks boxes. Red flag, stop.
Uh-huh.
But an agent, it's more like a seasoned investigator.
Mm-hmm.
It can look at the whole picture, spot subtle things, maybe even use a tool to grab more context before deciding. It's a whole different level of analysis.
That really clarifies the potential. Okay, so when should someone actually, go to the effort of building an agent versus using simpler automation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Strategically, agents really come into their own when things get complex and ambiguous.
So not for simple, repetitive stuff.
Probably not. If you've got a straightforward process, clear rules, traditional automation is likely cheaper, faster, maybe even more reliable. Stick with what works, right?
Makes sense.
But when you hit workflows needing nuanced judgment, lots of exceptions, decisions based on understanding context, that's agent territory.
Can you give us some concrete examples? Where would an agent be the clear winner?
Sure. Think about customer service refunds.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of gray areas there, right? Needs judgment based on the specific case, customer history.
Yeah, definitely not black and white.
An agent can be trained to weigh those factors. Or vendor security reviews. The rules can be massive, complex, always changing. A real headache to maintain manually or with simple rules.
I can imagine.
An agent's much better at interpreting and applying those shifting requirements. And then there's anything involving tons of unstructured data.
Like text or conversations.
Exactly. Reading customer feedback, pulling key details from diverse insurance claims, an agent's language skills are perfect for that.
So if the task is straightforward, predictable, maybe an agent is overkill. You have to really validate the use case first.
Absolutely. Does the problem really have that complexity? Those hard-to-maintain rules, that reliance on unstructured stuff? Sometimes, honestly, a simpler fix is better. Don't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut,
Good point. Okay, so we understand what they are, when they might be the right call. Let's get into the nuts and bolts. What are the fundamental building blocks?
Right, the core components. There's what we call the foundational trio: the model, the tools, and the instructions.
Model, tools, instructions.
Think of it as the brain, the hands, and the rulebook for the agent.
Let's start with the model, the brain.
Yep, that's the LLM itself. The engine providing the intelligence, the understanding, reasoning, decision-making power.
And you can choose different models.
Oh yeah, they vary in capability, speed, cost. A common approach is maybe start with a really powerful one like GPT-4 to figure out what's possible, set a benchmark, then maybe optimize later. Use smaller, cheaper models for simpler parts of the task, if you can, to save resources without losing too much quality.
Smart. Okay, so that's the brain. What about the tools, the hands?
Tools are what let the agent actually do things, interact with the world, perform actions beyond just talking. Like we mentioned, APIs, functions.
Right, querying databases, sending emails.
Escalating to a human, maybe? We can kind of group them. Yeah. There are data tools for fetching info, action tools for changing things or contacting systems.
Okay.
And even orchestration tools where one agent can actually call another agent as a tool for a specialized task. Gets quite meta.
Whoa, okay. Agents calling agents. And you stressed standardizing these tools.
Absolutely critical. Define them clearly, document them well, test them thoroughly, makes them reusable, easier to manage, avoids reinventing the wheel every single time.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, brain, model, hands, tools. What about the instructions, the rulebook?
Instructions are the explicit guidance. What's the goal? What are the steps? What are the constraints? What shouldn't it do? Clear, comprehensive instructions are vital for getting reliable results.
So how do you create good instructions?
Well, best practices include looking at existing documents you might already have, standard operating procedures, customer service scripts. Leverage that knowledge. It's also good to prompt the agent itself to break down big tasks into smaller, clearer steps. Makes it more manageable.
Okay.
Define the expected action or output very clearly for each stage. And crucially, try to think about edge cases. What weird things might happen? How should the agent handle them?
So you're building a really detailed AI-specific manual. You also mentioned something about advanced models helping write these instructions.
Yeah, that's pretty cutting edge. You can feed super smart models, like GPT-4 again, relevant documents, and they can actually generate a pretty decent first draft of the instructions. A huge time saver to get started.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we have the core parts: model, tools, instructions. Now, how do you actually make them work? Especially if you have more than one. That sounds like orchestration.
Exactly right. Orchestration is all about guiding the agent or agents through the workflow effectively. The usual advice is start simple. Build incrementally. Don't try to boil the ocean on day one. Generally, you see two main setups: single agent systems and multi-agent systems.
Let's start with single agent. Sounds simpler.
It usually is. You have one model, its set of tools, its instructions, it runs in a loop. Think, act, observe, repeat. Until it hits an exit condition. Maybe it successfully used a tool, produced the final answer, hit an error it can't fix, or just ran for too long, like a max number of turns.
That loop, the run loop, sounds central.
It is. And to handle complexity, especially if you have lots of tools or potential actions, prompt templates are really useful.
Templates?
Yeah, instead of writing tons of slightly different prompts, you create one flexible base prompt with placeholders, variables.
Like filling in the blanks based on the situation.
Exactly. Like Mad Libs for your AI's instructions. Keeps things cleaner.
Okay, that makes sense for one agent. When does it make sense to start thinking about multiple agents?
Good question. While you want to push what a single agent can do first, sometimes multi-agent is the way to go. One reason is really complex logic. Lots of if this, then that branches in the instructions can get messy for one agent.
Okay.
Another is tool overload. If you have many tools that do similar things, even with good names and descriptions, the agent might get confused picking the right one. Splitting tasks across agents with fewer, more distinct tools can help.
Right. So what do these multi-agent systems look like in practice? How do they coordinate?
There are a couple of main patterns we see emerging. First is the manager pattern.
Manager. Sounds hierarchical.
It is. You have a central manager agent. It coordinates a team of specialized agents. It uses tool calls to delegate specific subtasks to the right specialist agent.
So the manager calls another agent like it's calling a tool.
Precisely. The manager pulls the results back, integrates them, stays in control, and is usually the one talking to the user.
So good for a unified experience, but using specialists behind the scenes.
Exactly. Think complex customer service. The manager handles the initial chat, then might call a billing agent, then a tech support agent, then integrate the answers. Keeps the brand voice consistent.
Okay, I see the value there. What's the other main pattern?
The other one is more decentralized. Think of agents as peers. They can hand off tasks directly to each other based on specialization.
So no single boss agent.
Not necessarily. When an agent hands off, it's usually a one-way street. It passes the task, often along with the current context or conversation state, to the next specialist.
Where would that be useful?
Conversation triage is a classic example. An initial agent figures out what the user needs, then seamlessly transfers them to, say, a sales agent or a support agent who takes over completely.
So it's more like a relay race, passing the baton?
Kind of, yeah. It can be very flexible, allowing for more organic collaboration, a bit like how human teams sometimes work.
So manager pattern, hierarchy, decentralized dot network.
You got it. And it's interesting, you can actually visualize these systems as graphs. Agents are nodes, tool calls or handoffs are the edges connecting them.
Right.
Some frameworks let you define that whole graph up front, declaratively. Others, like the agent's SDK OpenAI put out, are more code first, letting developers define the logic programmatically. Different philosophies.
This is incredibly powerful stuff, but it also sounds like there's a lot that could potentially go wrong, which brings us neatly to guardrails. Why are they so critical?
Oh, absolutely essential. Paramount. Guardrails are your safety net. They ensure agents operate safely, reliably, ethically within your business rules.
We're talking privacy, safety, brand reputation.
All of it. And you really need layers. Think defense in depth. No single guardrail catches everything. You need a combination.
Okay, what kinds of layers are we talking about? What specific guardrails?
There are several types. You might have a relevance classifier to make sure the agent stays on topic.
Right.
A safety classifier to spot and block harmful inputs. People trying to trick it, basically. A PII filter is crucial to stop it leaking personal info.
PII, personally identifiable information. Got it.
Exactly. Then moderation tools check the agent's output for harmful stuff. Tool safeguards assess the risks of each tool it can use.
So checks on input, output, and the tools themselves.
Yep. Plus, you can have simpler rules-based things like block lists, limits on how much text it can handle, pattern matching with rejects. And finally, output validation. Does the response fit our brand voice and values?
It's quite a list. Seems daunting to implement.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
The usual heuristic is start with privacy and basic safety. Nail those first. Then iterate. As you see failures or potential issues in testing or early use, add more specific guardrails to address them.
Learn from mistakes.
Exactly. And keep tweaking to balance security with usability. You don't want guardrails so tight they make the agent useless. Some platforms, like the agent's SDK, build this in. They might use optimistic execution.
Optimistic execution.
Yeah, the agent tries to generate the response while the guardrails check it simultaneously in the background. If a guardrail flags an issue, bam! It throws an exception, stops the bad output from ever reaching the user.
Clever. So even with all this AI sophistication, all these guardrails, humans are still needed in the loop.
Absolutely. The human touch is still indispensable. For humans are needed to review and improve the agent over time. How can we make it better?
Continuous improvement.
Right. And also, for handling failures the agent can't resolve or stepping in before it takes a particularly high-risk action.
What triggers that human intervention typically?
Common triggers are things like exceeding failure limits, maybe it retried a task too many times and is still stuck.
Okay.
Or maybe it's about to do something sensitive or irreversible like deleting important data or sending a large sum of money. You definitely want a human to sign off on that.
Yeah, makes total sense. Wow, this has been a really thorough deep dive into AI agents. It's definitely clear they're a big step up in automation potential.
They really are.
Yeah.
Handling that complexity, that unstructured data, it opens up possibilities that traditional software just couldn't touch.
And hopefully for you listening, you're starting to think about where these might fit in your own world.
Yeah, those tricky decisions, those tangled rule sets, those mountains of text data. Could an agent help tame them? It's worth considering.
It really does feel like just the beginning for agents, doesn't it? There's so much more to explore here.
Definitely.
So if you want to keep digging into these AI concepts, get practical insights, stay updated, definitely subscribe to the Before AGI podcast. We'll be covering much more. And hey, shameless plug, but do check out my YouTube channel too, Ian Ochiang AI. I post tutorials, more visual breakdowns, hands-on stuff that complements what we talk about here.
Great resource.
Thanks again for diving deep with us today.